What's going on, everyone? My name's Tenebris Infinite, and today I'm gonna show you dudes 5 different designs for bases in Generation 0. It can be easy to fall into a trap of having just a simple base design in-game. Some sort of box, maybe some guns and towers, another box, and you're done. But base building and base defense can be so much more fun when you put together some sort of really crazy base. A base you can run through, climb over, have some hidden tunnels in that only you know about. A base you can really be proud of. With each of these base designs, the main goal is to have something functional that sticks to a specific theme, maxing the wall cap but kind of ignoring the other caps if need be. Though most of these bases are max build limit, sometimes you gotta sack a turret for symmetry. We're also going to be tying this video into a full week of content. Each day I'm going to put out a base defense video for each of these bases and grade them based on a few tests I've come up with. So let's get started with base number 1. I wanted to start strong here and hit you dudes with a real out there base. This base is an open concept type base, aiming to make the entire base a walkable space so that way if you need to get from one side to another, you can literally just walk or run without needing to stop and wait for doors or jump over walls or having to take the long way around or anything like that. Now, I think this is a really interesting base approach actually. As I was building it, I was thinking this base could actually have tons of different variants, using different grid shapes and maybe more defensive structures. And even though it's not like a rock solid base and the machines could probably get inside, I think the fact that the player can get to the machines no matter where they're at removes that problem. Of course, it does make the base defense more of a player-run kind of manual thing, but I think most of us automatically go out to fight the machines instead of staying inside the base, and this base really benefits that playstyle. The cool thing too about this open concept type base is that the walls wind up layering in a kinda cool and unique way that limits splash damage from doggo rockets, which is a huge added bonus. But sadly, defense-wise, this base has most of its turrets concealed as more of a kind of last-ditch plan. But I think with open concept bases, there are a ton of ways you could make defense more of a focus than I did with my design. So let me know. I know this base is kinda out there, but would you take a shot at building a open concept style base here in Generation 0? For base number 2, we're going freaking big, my dudes. Base 2 is using the maximum amount of the build space we have here in game. Huge bases like these are perfect for multiplayer sessions with your buddies, and really gives you a reason to actually fight out the waves from inside your base. Because, let's be honest here, the entire place is your base, so it's hard to get around outside the base anyway. Now, something kinda neat for this base, because this is the first really huge base that I've built here in the game, is that there's these really awesome concrete slabs that come up to support structures when you're on uneven terrain. And that's something that I think is absolute pure freaking genius from the developers. So this base really focuses on those stone slabs and kinda tries to like incorporate them into the base as much as possible. Little spitball idea here in the video, but maybe someday we could potentially elevate some of our structures out of the ground so that we could have this kind of partially elevated base that is entirely on this flat concrete kind of surface. I think it would add some interesting options to how our bases are laid out, especially uniform bases that fall into a square. Now, the interior of a huge base like this is actually really cumbersome for a solo player, and I think is probably not a good call unless if you run in teams of 3 or 4. Even with 2 players, I think that this is probably a little bit too much space to cover, and ultimately in skirmish and guerrilla you're gonna wind up having some walls get destroyed. Also, the problem is your base is stretched so thin across this large area that you wind up with only one wide walls. So your walls are going to go down a lot faster than in comparison to other designs you'll see from this video, simply due to the fact that they're only one wide. Also, you're going to suffer a little bit for your mobility because once you're outside of your base, it's generally a little bit more difficult to get inside of a large base like this than it is to get inside of a compact, tight, little base, small base. Now, this turret design here is actually kind of an interesting design. Basically, the idea of this turret is that, like, if the first turret dies, there's going to be a second turret in behind some walls, so that second turret will be able to start kind of filling in the role of what the first turret filled. I don't know how it's gonna work, but it's an idea. And I place most of these towers around the base, just kind of positioned in areas that will be able to access the wave spawns really easily from inside of the base. Now, from the biggest base we could build to the smallest, next up is the compact base. Using as little space as possible, but as many structures as possible, this thing is a mini tank, and maybe one of the most defensive structures I've built. This thing is mad walls deep, uses doors as extra fortification, and has some really unique pillbox fortifications too. This is probably one of the best solo bases I think I've ever built, and I think the whole concept of making an incredibly dense and compact base is really smart if you want to grind out a lot of waves and you don't want to spend a lot of time just doing tedious repairs around your base. Now, the space inside of the base is incredibly compact as well. You barely have room to breathe. There's pretty much just access to these hunting towers and the various crafting stations you have, and then there's doors to get outside of the base. All your basic necessities within arm's reach, and also the ability to defend your base from the inside utilizing the hunting towers. But really, this base is so small that it's better for you to just fight from the outside. Now, this little pillbox fortification that I put together over here is really cool, actually. It utilizes the door as a kind of manual on and off switch for the pillbox itself. It also allows you to hop up and aid the pillbox as it's taking down machines. This is kind of just a working concept and maybe isn't that practical for wave defense, but it was a cool idea, so I thought I'd slap it into the base here. And then on the outsides here for our tall walls, we've kind of doubled them up by just slapping useless doors on the outside, because the doors are actually just a little bit higher than the tall walls and provide just a little bit more extra protection for you when you're up in those hunting towers on the inside of the base. Now, this next base concept, just like the first concept, is a little out there, but ultimately, I think a really cool end result. The idea is tunnels to individual rooms that serve different purposes. And just like the first base, I think this is one that will be really cool to revisit someday. Maybe cut down on the rooms and have longer tunnels, or maybe just have 2 rooms with one really weird tunnel between them. I think this base design has a ton of potential. So my base wound up looking just kind of like this funky little cross shape, but it wound up being really cool. I worked in these doors to kind of lengthen the tunnels on each of the ends, and also provide some easy access inside and out of the base. Now, for a little walkthrough here, when you come into the base, there's the double door meta, good old double door meta, and a bike station to help you with getting around the base. After I built the really big base, I found that bikes are actually really useful for traversing your base. Now, on either side here, I just mirrored each side, just having these doors again to extend the tunnels, and the tunnels end off over here with just a couple turrets to defend either side. And then on the far side, I just have a turret with some small walls that you can use to kind of hop up and get inside and out of the base. This base ultimately was one of the more spur-of-the-moment kind of ideas here that I've built in the game, but I think that ultimately it winds up actually working out pretty good as a base. And even though it's a little bit clunky in its first iteration here, I think that future bases with tunnels and stuff like that will actually wind up being pretty fun to make. Now, speaking of fun to make, this next base was actually pretty fun to make. For the last base of today, I tried to channel my inner Pontus and build a really wacky and out there and asymmetrical and unexpected kind of base. Now you might be wondering, what is a Pontus style base? What does that mean, Tenebris? And in this case, I think that examples are better than words, so I'm gonna let Pontus the architect kind of take things away here.
So what can we build? Isn't that the wrong way? Well, I think you can decide, Burger. I kinda like it with the kind of big logs on the outside. Oh no.
Pontus's building style could be best described as, how do we say this? Like, abstract and asymmetrical, and what's another fancy A word? Avant-garde? I don't know, but it's cool to try to incorporate that devil-may-care kind of perspective into my own base building. Like, I'm normally all about making my walls match and have things be even and stuff, but this time I decided to just not do that. And the base turned out pretty freaking sweet, I'm not gonna lie. I worked in so many ideas that normally I couldn't fit into my normal base building approach, and they turned out sick. Like a corner pillbox system with a hidden tunnel to them, and a hidden tunnel where all my crafting stations were, which is totally an idea I'm gonna revisit in the future. Building small hidden things and bases could actually be really cool. I don't know, let me know what you dudes think on that. And then there's these weird, like, turret barrels kind of things that are made out of small walls. It's an idea that I saw shot around the community in the beginning of base building when it was first launched, but I haven't really seen too many iterations of, so I decided to take a crack at it. And then another thing too that's kind of just like a weird spur-of-the-moment idea that I put into this base is using hunting towers that I haven't placed down as just wall fortifications. So I just built like wall boxes around them with tall walls and then placed them on the inside, totally for the purpose of being shot and destroyed as I'm just fending the base. Really, it was kind of cool to abandon a lot of the habits that I built over the past couple weeks with base building here. And ultimately, like, this was a really fun project. So let me know, my dudes, do you have any base concepts that you'd like to see me take a crack at here in the game? As well, do you maybe have a favorite base? Again, all of these bases are going to be tested next week through some pretty rigorous base defense tests. So look forward to those happening daily each day next week. And for now, thank you for watching. Hopefully this maybe gave you some creative ideas for some bases you could build here in Generation Zero. And I will catch you all in the next one. Until then, peace out, my dudes.